Good morning, class. Andrew Smith here, Tennessee Tech mixtape class. America is a Mixtape, which is a topics in American literature course that I designed just for you all this semester, a brand new topic. And it's amazing. I was slowly bringing popular culture and popular music into my classes over the last 10 years. And it began with Bob Dylan and Marvin Gaye, and then it moved over, to the Grateful Dead. And I didn't go too far in with that, but we did look at music festivals as utopias and dystopias, which we'll be doing again later this semester. And we'll talk about Altamont and Woodstock 99, as well as 69. And then we'll also, of course, we'll have to talk about the Astro World Festival in Texas, the tragedy there from just last semester. But somehow, and also the lineage with the blues and gospel lineage, that's been on this syllabus for quite some time, to understand that the vernacular of African-American culture that you see in hip hop and slam poetry had its roots in the blues and the gospel. And of course, I tried to present, the blues and the gospel as this tangled, gnarly web, not as two separate lanes, not oppositions, but synthesis and what the philosophers call dialectics. But somehow I've managed all of these years, and even in class up until this very moment, I've managed to avoid Woody Guthrie. And I don't know how I have managed to avoid Woody Guthrie. I would mention him in passing during the Marvin Gaye unit when we discuss his renditions of the Star Spangled Banner. And you might be aware of the Star Spangled Banner. You might be aware of God Bless America. You might be aware of America the Beautiful. But Woody Guthrie wrote, and we sang as children. I don't know if they still sing it as children. Did you sing this song as children? But we sang as children, "This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water, this land was made for you and me." And the you is plural. It is big plurality of "this land is your land." And there's that hidden verse that's not in the primary school music curriculum. Outside of, yes, the steeple and the outside the city, in the shadow of the steeple, by the soup kitchen, I saw my people. I saw my people in the soup kitchen. And class, I need to tell you all a little bit about myself. When I was 18 and I was a freshman in college, I went to a school in Ohio in Yellow Springs called Antioch, a very small liberal arts school, and they had you alternate co-op and academic semester and not wait till your senior year for your internship. You had to do a couple of internships every year. And being that guy, the same guy that doesn't use iLearn or Zoom and has you on Google Meeting instead, that same guy that's talking to you right now, I wanted to invent my own co-op for my first semester. I ended up dropping out of Antioch and getting my bachelor degree from Wayne State University, a public school in Detroit, where I'm from. But during my short time at Antioch and my first co-op, I invented it myself. And the first part of my co-op, I went on a peace pilgrimage, and we hiked every day about 15 miles a day. Best shape ever in my life. I was a former cross-country runner myself, but now I'm kind of got a little bit of that pudge around the middle, not in the shape that I used to be, but I still love to walk. So I walked for peace for about 3 weeks, and then I got on probably on a bus, or caught a ride. I think I might have caught a ride from somebody, got dropped off in Georgia. I think I caught a ride from my friend Lisa, and Lisa dropped me off in Georgia. And I went and I marched for civil rights in Georgia. And I got picked up at the march in Georgia by two pastors, one now gone on by the name of Murphy Davis. May she rest in peace and power. Murphy Davis and her husband, Ed Loring, picked me up at the march in Forsyth, Georgia, drove me to Atlanta, where I lived for about 6 weeks at the Open Door Community, a hospitality house in solidarity with the poor and the unhoused on the streets of Atlanta. And I learned that the Bible that I read about in Sunday school and church had a passage in the 25th chapter of Matthew that said, however you treat the prisoner and the poor, that's how you treat Jesus. And I started to believe that. And so I stood in the soup kitchen lines, and I served the soup and the bread. I mopped the floors. We provided free showers, free bathrooms, a place to live. We provided food, no questions asked, as a gesture of hospitality. Because I think it was one of the Catholic saints that said, every stranger you meet is Jesus. So we did that. And then I moved to Detroit, and for a while in Detroit, I did that. But I started to realize that at a very young age that I felt a little bit lost in my middle-class suburban upbringing. And full truth be told, I'm still just a middle-class suburban kid with headphones on. And that back then I was listening to albums, doing my radio show, going to concerts, and many of the things that have inspired this class were present then. But I realized that my people were the misfits. My people were the outcasts. My people were the ne'er-do-wells, the marginalized, the people on the outskirts, and the people on the outside. And so I developed a particular affinity then for the tramp and the hobo and the homeless guy, and also for the person who's incarcerated in the joint for whatever thing. Some of them probably needed a little bit of rehabilitation. Some of them committed violent crimes, domestic assault, attempted murder, and things of this nature. But some of them also just got popped for a bag of weed or whatever, something like that. And so I started to develop this affinity for the people that Jesus talked about in Matthew 25, the sick, the hungry, the homeless, and those in jail. And in the music of Woody Guthrie, there is that affinity. Now, back in the day, in the Depression, they had hobos, tramps, and bums. A bum is a person who didn't work and didn't want to work. A hobo is a person who traveled and worked, and a tramp is a person who traveled. Oh, I said the definition wrong. But basically, we were talking, about that song, The Big Rock Candy Mountain, the other day. Somebody said you thought it was made out of candy. That comes out, and from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That comes out of the movement of the early part of the 20th century, about 100 years ago, where a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people were poor and were traveling. And they were traveling because they needed work. They needed a place to stay. And what we have to understand here is that there's a mixture here of voluntary and involuntary poverty, and that these people, some of them didn't want to work. Some of them couldn't work in the kind that jobby jobs that were available. And some of them actually had within them what you would call a wanderlust. And in a previous iteration on this class, we read about Chris McCandless. Some of you read that book in high school. It is on the high school curriculum today. I'm sorry we're not doing that book this semester, but if you have time to read Into the Wild, or learn about that, or watch the film, or read Wild, about a female who walks, there is this wanderlust, there is this hunger. And we're not reading Jack Kerouac on the road either. But in Woody Guthrie, in his Dust Bowl ballads, in his songs, there's this solidarity and this sympathy with the outcast. And also, you're going to find, especially in their lyrics, Jesus Christ, what you're actually going to see, which we don't see as much today, but it's still there, is you're going to see this uniting of the America is a very Bible-soaked land of the people that came here, the European ancestors that came here, some as colonizers and some as refugees from oppression. They were a religiously infused people. And some of their ideas about Jesus are very different than what you heard in the Woody Guthrie song, but some of them came with those ideas about Jesus that I just described as solidarity with the outcast and the poor. And Woody, what he did is he baked that into songcraft. He baked that into song, verse, into poetry. He made these poems out of this love for the outsider and the outcast. And he wrote a kind of a folk music scripture with guitar and harmonica that was to lift up the lowly. And what you found then is you found this unity then between that interpretation out of Matthew 25 and the people who were fighting for the rights of the workers and the rights of the poor. You may or may not be aware. If you've had a job, you've probably been aware. If you've had to work for some of your spending money or some of your tuition money, you're probably aware of this, that the minimum wage is $7.25 and it hasn't been raised in a generation. And they're asking for either $15 or $20, some people they call it fight for 15, but with inflation, by the time they actually get around to raising, it should be $20 or $25 minimum wage. And just think how your lives would be changed right now. Your material lives would be changed. Those of you who are working in retail or at restaurants or at starter jobs, what your life would look like if we're $15 or $25 an hour. It was $4.25 back when I had a job. That we've only gone from $4.25 to $7.50 from when I was in college. When I was scrubbing, the floor I went from the homeless shelter in Atlanta to working at a grocery store, a health food store in Detroit. $4 an hour. Then I could cobble it together, but rents were $100, $150. I just saw an article in the Herald Citizen this week. Herald Citizen, by the way, is our local newspaper here in Cookeville, Tennessee, that there's been a 41% increase in the rents here in Cookeville. And I don't think there's been a 41% increase in your wage as working at your job. And so that's what Woody Guthrie. So Woody Guthrie is taking kind of like the labor movement and the labor union, and all of us are in it together. The big we, and he's mixing it in this song with what the Bible actually says. You know, not what maybe you heard the Bible said, but what it actually says in the four Gospels. I apologize for preaching, but anyway, so for some reason today, thinking about Woody Guthrie this morning made me think of Eugene Debs. You'll have to look him up on your own. Eugene Debs ran for president several times back in the day, but this is kind of the spirit of what I am looking at today. Is what he said. He said, if I can find it here, I pulled it up this morning, and now it's not coming up here. Let me just see if I'm able to read it to you. Yes, he said. These are 3 short quotes. He said, "Years ago, I realized my kinship was with all living beings, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit bitter to the meanest on earth, one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, while there's a lower class, I'm in it. While there's a criminal element, I am of it. And while there's a soul in prison, I am not free." He went on to say that I have no country. My country is the earth, and I'm a citizen of the world. And finally, he said, "I would be ashamed to say that I had risen up out of the ranks, from the ranks. When I rise, it'll be with the ranks, not from the ranks." And this is the spirit of these hobo songs, these traveling songs. And I've realized that in the 1990s, before Spotify and YouTube and all these amazing ways to get so much music, sometimes a little bit I'm overwhelmed because it comes almost like by fire hose, or my ears are just bombarded with sound and so many choices and so many options. Just by clicking on my phone, you would actually go out and buy CDs. And I had the record. It was called Folkways: A Vision Shared, and it came out in 1988. And it really, 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 really moved me to my core. But it was other people doing the Woody Guthrie and the Leadbelly songs. And these are the same kinds of people. Alan Lomax was a friend of Woody Guthrie's. Alan Lomax was producing and promoting concerts with Woody Guthrie. Alan Lomax and his dad, John Lomax, are the ones who discovered Leadbelly. So I want you all to have that posture. I'm not saying that you guys are going to end up being an Alan Lomax or a Harry Smith or an Andrew Smith for that matter, but I want you to have the posture of open-mindedness and curiosity to discover something really exciting and something new when you do your album paper and your playlist. And I'm actually going to kind of be a bit of a boss, and I hate it because I'm not a boss. I'm a worker. I'm just a human among humans. I'm just a worker bee. I'm just another bozo on the bus. But I am going to impose upon you a list from which you'll have to choose your album paper from. And I'm working very carefully with some of my colleagues in music nerddom to compile the best possible list, with a diverse list for you all to pick from. This is going to conclude my little spiel this morning. I'm excited that some of you might go and listen to some Woody Guthrie and some Leadbelly. I'm going to play a brief portion of a documentary about Woody Guthrie that's going to loop into some of the things that I just said, and then I'm going to leave a couple minutes for you guys to check in or ask questions if you have them. For next week, you do have homework for next Wednesday and Friday. We're going to be looking at the book White Tears by Hari Kunzru. On Monday, I'll be talking about Amanda Petrusic, who is an American writer who's adjacent to the kind of stuff that I've been working on. And she's got 2 books I'll be drawing from to talk to you about. Now, I've emailed her twice. She's a famous New York writer. I've emailed her twice and asked her to come on the call with us on Monday. We'll see. Maybe she'll respond. So thank you all for listening. Woody Guthrie, This Land Is Your Land. That's